Question: Who, what am I, in quotations, according to Torah and Chassidus? Who am I according to Chassidus? This is the question. My regular answer to this question is, who cares? This is an entirely philosophical question that has very little bearing on life. And it's a distraction from life. Most people I know, when they go to the store and they buy strawberry ice cream because they like it, don't say, how do I know I want strawberry? Maybe the real me wants chocolate or vanilla or something else. This is how you feel. When it, like I say to people all the time, if it looks like free will and it sounds like free will and it tastes like free will, it is free will. On a philosophical level, these questions are real. And the question is not so much, who am I? The question is there an I? And it's the same question. It's not who makes the free will, but how do I have free will? And the short answer to the question, you are your godly soul. Because only your godly soul truly has an I. The animal soul doesn't really have an I. And you have to think about this in very, very simple terms, okay? We have different layers to our existence. One layer is our senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching, which makes us aware of our environment, but also makes us aware of the beauty in our environment. Music, art, dance, prose, rhyme, choreography, these are all chushim, these are all skills, these are all talents and feel sensitivities that are connected to the five senses. Then there's our emotional self, our passions, our feelings, and emotions, according to Chassidus, are broken up into two groups. One is what they call the old part of the brains. The emotions have to do with survival, fight or flee, which we call in our culture nihi, which are very reflexive, very instinctive. And higher emotions, which are far more sophisticated, that are able to be tender, and they're able to feel, and they're able to experience, and in some ways are able to process, evolve, what they call healing. And this is called, of course, chagas. And above that we have a mind. And above the mind is the subconscious, and the subconscious has a variety of different layers. All of these layers are parts of a person. But they're not an I. Because the meaning of I is a reality of self, and on some level a sense of self, which is void of any kind of stimulation. My emotional self is emotions. If you take emotions away from the emotional self doesn't become smaller, it disappears. My intellectual self is my intellect. You take away from me my intellect, and there's nothing left. And two prime examples for that would be animals and angels. And in Chassidus and in Kabbalah, angels, malachim, are called animals. Angels are called animals. Animals can be very sophisticated. There's certainly, some of them are capable of very high emotions, and they're capable of a certain level of intelligence. But their reality is defined by their skills. They are their intelligence, they are their emotion, they are their senses, they are their reflexes. If you take those things away, there is nothing left. In other words, there's nothing at the base of their life that distinctly defines them on an absolute level. According to Torah and according to Chassidus, a human being was given an I, was given an essence. We philosophically strongly associate that with the ability to choose freely, free will. And free will doesn't mean the ability to choose objectively, because that's intellectual choice. Intellectual choice is based on intellect. Computers can do that. Free will means the ability to choose based on nothing, based on I, which is a very difficult concept to even appreciate, because it seems random to the intellectual, to the one who defines things by specific faculties and specific strengths and specific positive versus negative definitions. But what makes a human being human, according to Torah, is you take away all his layers, there's something left. And if you take away all the layers of an animal or a malach, there's nothing left. And a perfect modern day example would be a computer. Computers are much smarter than we are. They're infinitely quicker than we are, and they're also able to process more precisely. But if you take away from a computer its brain, you don't have a computer minus a brain, you have nothing. In other words, the entire reality of the computer is the ability to compute, to calculate things using systems, orders that we program them with. Human beings and animals and angels also have a series of programs that were written for us by the great programmer with a capital G and a capital P, the Eibishter. And he's programmed all of us to be individuals, especially human beings, like it says in Sfarim. It's mentioned in Agdom of Tanya from the Gemara in Brachas and the Ramban, that you have 600,000 people together. You have to make a special bracha on the wonder of the diversity. No two human beings think alike. Hashem has programmed each one of us individually, but all of us have a program. And if you have enough information, and you can study that program, you can predict our responses. But you can only predict our responses based on the programming of our attributes, of our strengths, whether they're sensual, whether they're basic emotions, whether they're higher emotions, whether they're intelligence, whether they come from the subconscious. But the I of the human being, which is what's left over if you take away all those things, is an absolute truth. And it's what Chassidus calls the peace of God, because God has an I. And the meaning of God having an I is that his motivation, what makes the Eibishter operate, is not any system. It's not any set of laws, logic or otherwise, which is why the very definition, the very effort of trying to explain God and what he does and why he does has an element of silliness to it, because fundamentally you cannot interpret a being that's defined by something so deep that it has no form, using form, intellectual form, analytical form, philosophical form, mystical form. It all falls short. So the I of a human being is what's left over when you take away every attribute, every strength, every quality, which is something we have in common with God. And in terms of where in the neshama it is, it's obviously a part of the divine soul, because the divine soul is an expression of God and is connected to God. And the I is what we call a piece of God. The reason I'm using the word piece is it's as though he takes a piece of himself and gives it to us, and now it's us and no longer him. This is an idea which is, of course, found in Chassidus, and it's very difficult to explain the meaning of the word chelik. As the word chelik is used, it's meant to denote a separateness, a self-identity. And that's the I of the human being.